for October 26, 2022. It is 6:02 p.m. And we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and Danny Gonzalez will lead that for us. Okay, we have two items on the agenda tonight. They are both for the same property. One of them is legislative, which means we will only be making a recommendation to the city council, and the city council will have the final say on that. And the other one is administrative, which means we will be making a decision on it tonight. We will start with a roll call. We'll start down here with Mr. Whitlock. State your name and whether you have any conflicts tonight.
Jeff Whitlock, no conflicts.
Melissa Kendall, no conflicts.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
Robert Knudsen, no conflicts.
Daniel Gonzalez, no conflicts.
Andrew South, no conflicts.
Okay. We will then go straight to item 1. Actually, I'm going to read them both in together. And Keith, I can't remember your... Maury. Mr. Maury is going to present these items because Mr. Wright is not here. I'm going to read them both in because he's going to present both items together, even though we will vote on them separately. Item 1, Stephen Sowby requests a zone map amendment from the R18 one-family residential zone and the RC residential conservation zone to the LDR low-density residential zone in order to build a twin home located at 1220 East, 960 South in the Provost South Neighborhood. And then item 2, Stephen Sowby requests approval of a concept plan for a new twin home in a proposed LDR low-density residential zone located at 1220 East, 960 South in the Provost South Neighborhood. Mr. Maury.
Am I off? No, thank you. I thought I was on. Sorry. Thank you very much. That's better. Now I can speak more softly. So let me go to the next one. Sometimes this clicker works and sometimes it doesn't. Rachel, I don't know why. Will you just do it? So there's an aerial that actually shows the piece of property right now. And historically, we've gotten a lot of requests to do something on this piece of property and a lot of confusion about what could or couldn't happen here. And so from our perspective, this is a nice opportunity to clear up a vacant piece of property and create kind of a blend from the higher density to the to the west, to the lower density to the east. And so the concept that we have before us tonight really, we think, meets both the future land use plan. It fits kind of the intention of the area plans that were in place for that area. And we think it addresses kind of the vacant property. Can you go to the next one? That's the parcel. You can see a little more clearly. One of the things that is being proposed, it's a little bit confusing, and it was confusing for me too. There's kind of a request to rezone the property that's zoned the R18, which is parcel B. But then there's also a request to zone that parcel A, which is the RC zone, to the LDR as well, because that little piece is needed to give them the frontage that they need and in the amount of property that they need to put the two homes in there. So that's why we have the request for the two different zone changes. Next one. That's kind of a layout of what the twin home concept would be. There has been some concern that this road has some traffic on it that could make backing out onto that road difficult or awkward. I think that in talking with the developer and kind of looking at this piece of property, the way those garages and the driveways in front of those are configured, there really is the potential that driveway could be used so that they could back out and kind of turn and get turned around in that driveway, so that if the traffic was bad, you probably could have approached the 960 South head on instead of backing out into that road if there really was that much traffic. And I think the future residents that live there would navigate that, as best they saw fit to give them access to 960 South. Next. That's just a close-up that kind of shows the property boundary and how the home would sit on that lot. Next. This is just kind of a high-level rendering of what the units would potentially look like. Just so you can kind of see the scale and the design. Next. So that's item one. I don't know if you have any questions for me beyond what I've presented. It's pretty straightforward development. I know that there's been some concern from residents, and I think you're going to hear some of those, and you've read some of those about the increased density. From my perspective, I think I'm sympathetic. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not. However, I think that the change in density from one residential unit to two is really not significant enough that I think that there's a concern that it's going to have a negative effect on the fabric of the community around them. And I think having these two units there, when you've got higher density to the west and lower density to the right, is kind of a nice blend. It's the ideal situation that we'd like to see as zones transition between one to the other, that you kind of do have a step down that's not so dramatic. And so I think it's a nice compromise and allows us to let those two projects blend together. And I don't think that the traffic increase on that residential road will be significant enough that you would know the difference between two units and one unit. So staff is recommending that you provide a positive recommendation on this. And I'm happy to answer any other questions if I can. If not, I know the developer is here and he can probably answer more specifically the questions you might have.
Mr. Maury, will you present item 2 as well?
I will. You want me to do that right now?
Yeah, just because I feel like it would be more
would be
efficient to
more
have
than happy
all
to
of the
do that.
discussion on both of them simultaneously.
So anticipating that rezone were to take place, or if it were hypothetically were to take place, then item 2, if you go to the next slide there, Rachel, is the concept plan for how this would actually lay out. And you've kind of seen some high level concepts, but let's go a little bit farther into that. Which next? Is that it? So these are kind of the concepts plan. That's the property boundary. Go to, and that's kind of the building that is being proposed for the site. So.
Okay, commissioners, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Maury or other staff questions? Ms. Kendall?
Can we go back to the map? And what is the density of those larger structures behind the property?
So though, if I'm not mistaken, I think those are 12 plexes or 8 plexes.
They
They're
are,
multifamily apartments, both to the south and to
plexes.
the west.
each building is a 12-plex.
Yeah, I thought that they were 12
Two and
plexes.
two and
So-
3-bedroom 12-plexes.
That's an interesting point. Most of the residential units to the east are smaller than the 8,000 square foot lots that you would normally, that are required for that zone. This particular portion of property is almost 10,000 square feet for that lot. And so it's bigger than those. And so I think that's the other reason why the proposal for a twin home is being forwarded here, because it's a little bit too big to actually allow or to make sense for a single family home to be put there. So
How many car garage is that?
2-car garages, 2-car spaces for each of those units.
Car.
So yeah, 4 cars for those 2 units, which is kind of typical for what you'd have for each single family home.
And do we know the square footage of those the twin homes?
I'll let the developer answer that specifically. I don't know off the top of my head, but he can answer that.
1132 each level?
I would like to know, is there a area map that shows us the lot size of the home directly to the east and the lot size of the home to the north, just so we could have,
This shows the square
Adjacent
feet of each
comparison?
of those. This shows the square feet of those homes?
yeah, not the homes, but
I-
the lot.
I
I'm just
could-
trying to compare lots to lots.
Well, yeah, that's
But
why I
this is
said.
like a 10,000 square foot lot. What are
I don't
those?
know exactly, but my understanding is
I could
most of
pull
the
it up.
residential lots to the east are less than 8,000 square feet. I'm sorry, Mr. Gonzalez.
I do have the county recorder's
Oh, good.
parcel map up. If you're talking immediately east,
Yeah, the house immediately east looks like it has a fairly
So-
large lot.
that's 0.23. The one on the corner, 0.23. And then if you go down, like he was saying, the lots are smaller.
What
There's-
about the one across 960 south to the north? That one that
the
fronts on
north
1230
is
east?
0.20.
Okay.
206. The smaller ones he was referring to were range from 0.15 to 0.16, 0.17.
Any other questions for Mr. Maury? Mr. Knutson?
Yes, one of the neighbors, I was reading their comments about this proposal. And they said that in the southeast neighborhood plan, that there were no properties currently zoned as R1 are recommended for changes. So this would be a violation or would go against the southeast neighborhood plan. Do you have any? comment
Yeah,
on that?
and actually it's not. I mean, in the planner's staff report, I think you saw in Dustin's report, it actually complies with the neighborhood, the area plans for that area. And they didn't feel like there was any conflict at all.
Well, it's,
But the language says if you change from to discourage changing from single family to something of a higher density.
So and I don't know, I mean, from Dustin's comment, his comments for in response to that are the land use map for the general plan has been reviewed and found to be correct for this area, and that there are no conflicts noted between the general plan map and the general plan policies for that area. So
I noticed that he said that in his staff report, but I wondered the same thing with that letter, that is something I've heard before with the Southeast area plan, that maybe we could
clarify and
verify
find
or
out
clarify.
specifically. Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
because if that's a policy, we need to respect that.
Is the Provo South neighborhood that is part of the southeast area plan?
Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
I think it goes all the way up to Center Street, possibly even a little bit north of that. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Maury?
If you rezone to an LDR, I do have one question, to the LDR zone, what is the maximum density somebody could put there? Let's say we didn't have a proposal already for a townhome.
What's the maximum density in the LDR zone? I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
It would be limited by the
By the
lot
lot
size
size.
though, right?
Right, it is.
And the
Exactly.
frontage and
Yeah.
all the other
Yeah.
parts.
I mean, you're not going to get anything bigger than this twin home, for example. So it couldn't be, I mean, it's practically speaking, although the zone might allow higher density. I mean, the LDR zone is designed to be lower density zone that's compatible with single family homes, but it does allow some higher densities on larger lots. So that's why you could put a twin home here, but you don't have enough room to get anything more than that.
Thank you, Mr. Maury.
Yeah.
Okay, we will now have the applicant come forward and present anything that you think would be helpful for us to understand your requests on items number 1 and 2. State
Thank
your
you.
name and tell us where you live.
My name is Steve Sowby. I'm actually the engineer for the developer. The developer here is Mr. Sharp. So I'm just the agent in this case who filed the plan. And we think that this is a pretty neat deal, actually. One of the very few places in Provo where you can find a single lot where you can build a twin home. And we appreciated the people to the west cooperating because we needed just a little bit more frontage. Otherwise, there'd be no reason to do this. So we appreciate the staff report where they said there were no conflicts and everything looked good. It met the plan, it met the area goals, it met the dimensions, it met the densities, and we think that it's a pretty easy deal and would appreciate your support in this and available to answer any questions you have.
I was wondering, are the large trees on the west side of the property proposed to be affected by this at all? I think the property itself is mostly weeds, right? Or are there trees that would be?
Yeah, large trees not be affected. That's part of the property that we are not purchasing. So
Because they make a nice visual buffer between development as well as.
yes, that's correct. As do some of the trees on the south east quadrant of that also. The neighbor on the east, he'll see one side of the building, whether it's a single family or a twin home. So we didn't think that made much difference there.
Would you be open to a less bland design?
Of course.
That's.
Yes, that was just one we submitted that had been built before, but the developers have built some really nice twin homes. And these are not small. If you go back to that one picture you just had just before, 1,132 square feet each level. So you could have 3 levels with 3,300 square feet. And I and my family lived in a twin home like this and thought it was great.
When you say 3,300, is that for a basement? Is this
Basement,
buildable lot for a
main
basement?
level, second level. It could have 1,100 square feet on each level. Not including the garage. The garage is in addition to that. Yes. And we meet all the setback requirements. When the engineers, city engineers reviewed this, they only had one significant comment, and that was move the water meter, and that's easy. So we think engineering wise, it can work also.
Any other questions for the developer, commissioners? Danny, you have your laptop open. Will you look up the LDR zone? And tell me what the minimum lot size is in an LDR zone? Like not immediately, but would you be willing to do that? Yeah. Or Andrew, or is that easier for you? Right. I'm just wondering if the 4,085 square feet is actually an okay lot size for an LDR zone. Just in case something has been overlooked.
Says low density residential zone Chapter 1414A, established to provide a higher density residential environment with attractively landscaped one-family or two-family structures compatible with the character of one-family residential housing.
Okay, we need a minimum lot size is all I'm looking for. So that would be more in the
Oh, you want
verbiage
the
of the
minimal lot
ordinance.
size? Then we got to
Yeah.
look up chapter 14.
I appreciate that though, because that gives the intent of the LDR zone. That's helpful. Okay, while we are doing that research on the end, let's open this up for public comment. So before we do that, let me let you know that we received 2 letters from the neighborhood, one of which was from Becky Meng. Her main concerns were safety and that the roads were already crowded. And then Kyle Stapley, who was the one that pointed out the general plan policies about don't change from a single family neighborhood, who also was concerned about there being a lot of cars already parked along the side of the road. So first, if there's a neighborhood chair here, which I don't see. Okay, and then we'll open it up to anyone who would like to comment from the public, and you have 2 minutes and 1 go at the podium. So no double dipping. All right, come on up and tell us your name and then tell us where you live.
My name is Curtis Worston, and I'm a resident of Southeast Provo. Since 2015, when the Southeast Area Plan was developed, there have been, according to my numbers, approved or built about 446 apartments or condos, 436 townhomes or twin homes, and about 60 single-family homes, which is about 6% of all the units approved or built in the 7-year period. And even about half of those single-family homes are restricted as over 55-year-old housing. Single-family homes are important for our neighborhood by providing a diversity of housing and providing a place for residents looking to live long-term in the neighborhood. There's still a strong demand for single-family homes here in Provo, but many of our neighbors who grow out of their townhomes end up moving to other cities like Spanish Fork or Salem instead. The Southeast Area Plan, it looks out for this by recommending setting aside areas for single-family homes and not rezoning any R1 zones. The problem is there is only a limited amount of infill areas set aside in the R1 zone, and we need to keep them available for single-family homes. Further, I want to point out that this site in question really fits best as a single-family lot. When you look at the layout proposed, it really seems kind of an awkward layout for a twin home with the lot lines going across an angle to the double wide diagonal driveway, which may encourage additional cars not to be parked on the driveway, but in the street where there's already a growing parking problem. Also, the wide driveway seems to merge into the existing crosswalk. That's a problematic thing because kids from all over the neighborhood converge in this area to make their way north on the neighborhood trail to school, and a combined crosswalk and wide driveway like that encourage crossing anywhere in the driveway. It makes the most sense to keep this lot single family since it really is just the size of a single family lot and uses creativity to gain enough street frontage. I just would encourage the commission to deny the rezone and follow the Southeast Area Plan, which recommends keeping all R1 areas available for single family homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Partridge, and I live in the Cinnamon Ridge neighborhood that is just east of this lot here. I've lived in my home for 15 years. I would love to see something developed, a single family home developed on this lot, but I do not think a twin home is an appropriate thing to go in this area. I agree with the comments that you've already stated that have come in the letters about safety. But I want to speak in addition to that. I think it's important when we plan as a city that we have some cohesion to our neighborhoods, and there are no other twin homes in this area at all. And I think it would just feel really out of place here. It is a part of the neighborhood to the east and the neighborhood that 1230 East, just north of it, that are all single family homes. And so I would like to see a cohesive single family home in that area. I hope that the Planning Commission will keep the zoning the way it is, and I would love to see the developer that is currently looking at it. I hope they can stick with the project and just turn that into a single family home. I think the market is still good enough right now that someone would come in and be able to purchase that property there. And let me just see if there was anything else I wanted to add to that. There was an email that came into you about 20 minutes ago, so I know you haven't seen it yet, but it is from the neighborhood co-chair of the Cottonwood Meadows development just on that 1230 East Street there. And she mentions that a proposal came up a few years ago previously to do a twin home, and the neighborhood at the time also said, we don't want to see a twin home here. And so we hope that the same thing happens again today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, my name is Becky Bundy and I live in the cul-de-sac just on the 1230 East area in there. And just to kind of bring a point, all those lots pretty much in the cul-de-sac are above 0.2. You guys were kind of saying that they were like 0.15 or 0.18, but mine's 0.22. The one right across the street from this house is 0.36. So they're a little bit bigger lots. I just wanted to also mention the parking issue. As you can tell, there's cars parked in front of it now, but I also took pictures on the way here of cars parked in front of the mailbox, in like 3 cars there with trailers in front of it. And a car is usually parked in front of the fire hydrant. And you know, the little black pathway, they park on both sides of that, in front of the fire hydrant and in front of the house. So I'm afraid that if we add more density and the city's already not taking care of the parking situation now, and like with fire hydrants and kids' safety, that it's going to become more of a problem. And a lot of the kids that come out of the crosswalk area, well, it's not a crosswalk, but they come out of the black path area because it's a safe walking zone for Provost. They are always blocked in by cars. So you'll have kids darting out between the cars to get across the street because a lot of them live in the apartments and also Cinnamon Ridge. So I just feel like that's a huge problem that we need to address as well. And again, repeating what Jennifer said about the look of it, it's going to look really kind of big compared to like the houses around it. So it's not going to really kind of go with the flow of what the house designs are right now. So I think that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Becky, is there a laser pointer on the podium?
Yes.
Will you show the commission what path you're talking about that comes from the elementary school that the kids use, and show where it would cross the street? And will you also show where the mailboxes are?
Oh, this one. Okay.
Can you move that
this
timer?
is a lot of kids cross this street right here. This is just in front of our cul-de-sac, but right here, there's a little black path that goes here, and they've made it kind of a safe walking
It's
path.
actually to the left.
Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. The safe walking path right here. This is where a lot of the kids from the apartments and from Cinnamon Ridge go to get to Provost, the walking school, the elementary school. And right now there's a fire hydrant right here and a mailbox right here, and cars park all along here, and they park there all the time. So kids are running out into the road between all these cars. And right now there's this truck here, another car with the trailer, another car here, another car here. So there's like tons of cars lined up here and over here most of the time. And so we're just afraid that if you add 2 more full houses in that small area, then you're going to just like, it's going to be a mess. So that's our biggest thing too. And then the look of it, but just to also remind the lot size above. They're all bigger.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I have those lot size numbers now.
Okay.
So it says minimum lot area for one family detached is 4,000 square feet. Twin home duplex, 8,000 square feet, and one family attached, 10,000.
So when it's a twin home, Mr. Maury, does it have to only have the 8,000 minimum? It doesn't have to have it meets it in either way, but I just was curious.
Yeah, but basically what that means, if it's a twin home, it has to have at least 8,000 square feet, and this has more than that. So
So
it's
it
fine.
just said single family detached was 4,000 square feet, but
Right.
this wouldn't qualify as that.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, any other neighborhood comment?
So I'm the developer of this lot, and we've had some comments about the neighborhood to the east. So Dustin called me or sent me an email yesterday and said that Planning Commission would like to hear some thoughts from people. So I've tried to reach out to a few people. It's really hard to find people online, but I did reach 2 people, obviously Slate County Apartments. And I'm going to pass this out for you so you can have it too. So the Slate County Apartments have agreed and think that this is a fine proposal that we're offering, as well as the gentleman to the north of, kind of northwest of us. His name's Dave Harmon. He owns that Jodell, I think that's how you pronounce it, apartments. He's given us a good go ahead as well. So I understand that the residential neighborhood to the east kind of has concern. I don't see how the current parking situation that has nothing to do with us developing a lot there is how we're going to make that even worse. If anything, I think we're going to clear that up because we're not going to allow people to park in front of our lot. And we're not going to have people parking out on the street anyway. It's going to be on their lot, just like they'd be parking their own home and their own lot as well. So I think that's not a very valid viewpoint. So as far as the aesthetics of the building, I think that we'll be able to address that and make it a really nice twin home.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do any commissioners have any questions that they would like to clarify with the public comment?
Yes, I do have one question. What are the square footages of the homes around there? So the homes in our view across the street, right next to it, the one next to that, any idea what those square footages are?
So mine.
Come up.
So mine is like 3,000, a little over 3,000. Yeah, 3,600 with the basement finished. And then so is the one, so most of the ones in the cul-de-sac besides the one on the corner are all around 3,000. Give or take without
Yeah, to
basements.
the north.
Sorry, this area, all these houses. And this one, how big is yours? 3,600. 36. They're all about the same.
Do you need that differentiated with the footprint versus overall square footage? That's good. Okay. Okay, with no other public comment to be heard, this is where commissioners, we discuss amongst ourselves what we feel. So I think our discussion can be for the project as proposed, as well as for the zone change. But I would love to hear what everyone, what your feelings are about the requests that are being made. Mr. Knutson.
I drove by today. It was about 11 o'clock this morning. And that road 960 south was just completely full of parked cars. I drove over and went through this Cinnamon Ridgeway. I'm from the west side of Provo, so I don't get over into that southeast part of town very often, but I drove through the Cinnamon Ridge subdivision. I thought it was very nice, very, very well done, very nice homes in there. Looking at the lot, I really felt that it should be a single family residence. But I can see also where it is kind of in a transition area between heavier density and single density or light density. So I'm kind of twisted between, but to me, it seemed like it would be a fantastic place for a single family residence.
Thank you. Anyone else want to give us your thoughts or concerns? Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, I also drove by this morning, like around 8 o'clock. I could confirm there's a lot of cars right there. And to me, it's a it's a mess right now with the on-street parking. And hearing about the kids that cross on that pathway. And I think an email mentioned a recent pedestrian incident. It's really concerning. And so for me, I look at, okay, what's the remedy for that right now? If there's already some safety issues, and it would be, well, going through, I don't know who you'd go through for, like, get a school cross guard. There's the volume of incidents there, but I also don't see a twin home being the tipping point, the straw that breaks the camel's back on pedestrian and safety. I read Mr. Stapley's email, and one of the parts he quoted was that like well-maintained lots and clean lots. This is not it's neither well-maintained or clean. You wonder, like, I look at the county recorder and the list of property owners in the last 20 years. It's passed through the hands of 7 different developers in the last 20 years, 7 different property owners, and none have elected to build a single family home there. So you have to ask yourself why, because it's adjacent to the higher density home. What's held them back from developing it? Part of me thinks I had actually looked at this lot once, an interest in possible development. But my wife said, I don't want a single family home next to a multifamily house. He's a realtor. So then you're left, well, what's going to go there? What goes there? And then last, this is more of a rhetorical question, is if there's some community opposition to this, it sounds like, but if 2 families move in there in a twin family home, knowing that you don't want this development there, how will you treat those families that move in? Will you accept them and adopt them as part of the community, or they be looked down upon because they own a twin home? So just something I'm thinking about, how that would play out in the future.
Mr. South?
I think most of it's been said from my perspective. Looking at the Southeast Neighborhood Plan and where those apartments are and the little cutout specifically for that vacant land, it seems to me that if there was ever a time for some infill opportunity there, this would be it, for a twin home infill opportunity. And I think that's the point that Keith has made and planning staff, and I appreciate their work on this. While I can appreciate the sentiment of the community that come out and share their feelings, appreciate them being a part of the process, I feel the same way as Mr. Gonzalez. I'm not sure that that's the tipping point for either safety or parking in this area. I also went out there this morning. It was about 7:30 and saw the cars there. There's some dry box cargo van parked in front of it there. It's unkempt right now. So I think it's in the community's best interest to get that developed. I think the size and shape and character of what's being proposed right now is not that dissimilar from either one of the houses across the street or the existing house. Those are my feelings.
Thank you. Ms. Kendall?
Can I ask, is the frontage that's there existing, is that big enough for a single family home already without purchasing that little piece of property? Or is it not big enough for a single family home, the frontage?
Yes, the frontage is sufficient for a single family. And the reason we understand it was did not go forward the last time it came to the staff was it wasn't big enough for a twin home, but it is sufficient for a single family. Can I make another comment now, or is this okay time?
We are just going to keep deliberating.
If I have a chance, please call on me.
Thank you.
I guess the concerns that I have, sensitive to the neighborhoods plan and to not rezoning parts of a neighborhood. And, you know, it takes us back to those two competing interests. So while the city planner is correct in saying that it meets the plan in one respect, it also doesn't meet the plan in another respect. And so, you know, how do we handle these two competing interests? And I don't think it's the townhome issue so much, you know, I think whatever goes there, people will love and accept whoever's there. I just think the concerns that have been raised, I'm sympathetic to, because you're building essentially two homes right next to each other of the same square footage as the surrounding homes. So you could have the potential for 8 cars coming in and out of there because they have 4 spaces, whereas the other homes only have 4 spaces. So I can really see the issues that the neighbors are raising, and I feel a lot more loyal to not rezoning a piece of property. And I also agree that there aren't very many parcels left to build a single family home on. And if the neighborhood would like to retain that, I think that's great. I don't know why nobody's decided to do that yet. And it may be because they back up on higher density housing. But it faces everywhere else rather than the high density. So I don't know, those are some of my thoughts.
Mr. Maury, I sense that you have information to enlighten us.
And
with.
I don't know that I have anything that's perfectly clarifying, but I thought you just made a comment about it being rezoned to high density residential, and just to make sure we're
Sorry,
clear.
I didn't mean high density. I
It's
meant
low
LDR,
density
right.
residential, correct?
LDR, right, which is a change though.
But
from that.
in the staff report, one of the things that Dustin points out is that the rezoning the property will align with the future land use map for this area as shown in the Southeast Neighborhoods Plan. So the Southeast Area Plan actually has the future land use map designation that shows low density residential is appropriate for that area. And this lot is adjacent to that low density area. And so I think that's why staff recommended that they feel like it's in harmony with the plan for that area and not in conflict with it, that it does still preserve the low density environment of the neighborhood to the east, while cohabitating, so to speak, with the higher density to the west.
This parcel exists in the residential zone though, correct?
Correct.
Right, that's why we're
It's
having
next
to
to the low
rezone it.
right. But I think that's why Dustin was saying that the staff's sense is that because the Southeast Area Plan shows the future land use map with the low density next to this, they felt like that was appropriate and in harmony with what they intended or what they hoped would happen.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess I just feel like it is taking a lot away from the single family neighborhood.
And that's true. And I know part of me, I think you have to think a little bit contextually about history, right? Although there may be a lot of desire for that to be a single family home development, the number of owners that have occupied this piece of property for 20 years that have been unable to do that suggests that there's a problem with that intent. And unless we're comfortable with this continuing to stay a weed patch empty lot, we need to be thinking about, is there an adjustment that we could make that would allow a development to occur that would improve that piece of property? And I think the suggestion is from a developer that's looking at this is, yeah, probably could, if it's not a single family home, if it's a twin home, then the market would allow a project like that to go forward. So again, I'm not advocating, but I'm just saying to some extent, I think you kind of have to think about history and say, although we're sympathetic to what the residents are saying about wanting that to be a single family home, it historically hasn't been successful. So, is there something that we could do to change that a little bit? And I think that this rezone is still in harmony with those plans and allows that to take place. So,
Do we know why why people haven't built on it? Is there any reason
Well,
that
I think
historically that you know of?
Mr. Gonzalez's comments are probably really reflective of what the market is, right? I mean, generally speaking, somebody that's going to build a single family home that's worth more than $500,000, closer to $1 million probably, is probably looking at real estate and saying, I don't necessarily want to make an investment like that in an area that's proximate to higher density. And so that's why as planners, I think we always look at if there's an area like this and we can transition from a higher density to a lower density, that product is probably more successful than if it's a direct, single family to high density. And probably the reason why it hasn't is because people are having that same kind of experience. If I'm going to spend that kind of money and I'm going to develop a single family home, it's probably not going to be right next to these higher density units.
Okay, and then once you rezone that property, they can build whatever size as long as it meets requirements. So
Which is going to be a twin home. I mean, you saw the minimum lot sizes. You're not going. I mean, it's 8,000 square feet. This is 10, so you're not going to build anything more than a twin home on that lot.
but you couldn't say the twin home needs to be smaller, right?
You couldn't say, is that what you?
Right. You couldn't limit that. It's just
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the limit is going to be the size of the building that will fit on that lot and meet our setback requirements. But I think, what's being proposed is pretty closely related to the size of the lots, the homes that are adjacent to it, right? Somewhere around 3,000 square feet. I mean, it's pretty similar.
I also noticed that I think it's a 3-car garage to the house to the west. So, I mean, if you looked at, and then they also have
To the east?
or to the east, yeah. So for me, I just kind of think of like, what are the principles at play here? And for me personally, my interpretation of my role here, it's like, we're supposed to respect property rights of owners unless it's significantly against the goals of the city or creates health and safety issues. And then generally a principle for me that I generally come into these meetings with is we just need more family homes in the city. We don't have enough. There's a lot of people around my age and my family's age that need places to live, and single family homes on the bench are just too expensive. So I have that bias and I'll call that out. But if I look at those two things, the goals of the city, so we have the staff report that says this aligns with the goals of the city. I don't see a strong reason to disagree. And then health and safety is always something that, we should take a concern. And I take a lot of consideration at the emails that we receive from the residents. And, I think that's definitely very worth calling out. And I have a lot of compassion and sort of empathy for that. I do think, though, that there are a lot of assumptions being made in those concerns. These are two homes with 2-car garages, and to assume that those are going to bring a lot more cars than a single family home, I think is not an assumption that I necessarily believe strongly. Because if you're going to build a single family home on this lot, it's going to be expensive. It'll probably be a family later stage in life. They could have 4 kids and have 6 cars. Like, we just don't know that. It's like a big assumption. So I don't really feel like it's within my purview to, vote against the property rights of the owner based on a bunch of assumptions. And especially when we have the staff report. So that's kind of where I'm thinking generally, just for me. And like, I just want to, for the residents that came today, I really appreciate you coming, and, reasonable people can disagree. And this is also a political process. We're just an administrative commission, and you can always go to your city council member and that's the political process here. Whereas we're not as political. We just try to have to see this within our roles here.
Thank you. Okay.
Commissioner Jensen, I have a question. One of our stated goals is housing affordability, and so in that light, I'd want to ask the developer what price point would they contemplate pricing a unit of the twin homes at, and if it would do anything to make homes more affordable. Do you have a response? Are you prepared to tell us how much you'd be listing those units for?
Yeah, thank you. We actually don't have interest in selling these right at the moment. The whole purpose behind this was to kind of fall in line with what Mr. Whitlock was saying, is that to try and find some affordable housing. My son is looking for a house, and he just recently got married, and it's tough to find a house out there right now. And so our intent was here to try and build something here that they could live in and then rent out the other side to help reduce their mortgage. And that's kind of the main purpose behind it. Now, I'm not going to say that once he gets older and has 3 kids or whatever it is and moved on, I'm not going to say that he's going to be the only guy there renting. So that was our main intent on this whole thing, is to try and find some lot that would be able to accommodate some affordable housing. Because I'm sorry, what was your name, sir? Keith is right. I mean, this is going to be an $800,000 single family lot, and not very many people are going to build an $800,000 home or more right there in that subdivision.
Thank you. So I'm going to chime in here. My initial thought was, hallelujah, we're getting rid of that vacant lot. No more smoker parties sitting there. Like, it's going to be an improvement to the neighborhood. Everyone's going to love this. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was concerned. I understand the desire to call this a blend. And as a planner, I love having a buffer zone between single family and higher density. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. But then the more I look at it, it feels like it's still part of that single family neighborhood. And so it kind of doesn't fit in. And then I started thinking about, well, if everyone who was adjacent to the higher density pulled the same card, all of those homes that front onto 1230 East and back onto that walking trail would say, hey, there's an apartment building behind us, or there's a warehouse behind us. We need to have twin homes here. And the dynamic of that neighborhood would be very different. I also know that had this property owner sold their property when Cinnamon Ridge was developed, every one of those houses would be single family and nobody would be complaining about that. I mean, maybe that adjacent to the higher density would have a pathway there or something that would, like they did to the north. I look at the zoning of the Jodell apartments, and all along State Street further to the north, it's commercial, heavy commercial. So like, it has no future dream and vision of this being a residential area to the north, and yet there's single family homes that are abutting onto that. So I just have these mixed feelings of good planning, bad planning, neighborhood preservation, honoring the area plan. And honestly, until someone shows me that I'm wrong, I'm inclined to say, if the southeast area plan actually does in fact say, like I remember it saying, that we are not going to downzone these limited single family lots that exist in this area, I would be inclined to say, then that's not good planning for us to do this. I'm very much opposed to patchwork zoning. I do not like it when there's a zoning change request that comes in and says, I know everything else around me is one way, but I want to be something different. And if this was actually the same zoning as what was to the north or the west, that would feel less stark to me, but this is actually asking for something special. I know that we don't actually rezone to residential conservation. If for new development, that doesn't make sense, but I'm
can I understand how
I'm really torn between making this a buffer and saying, no, everyone else had to do it. You should too. And it will thrive because it will. Like, I really feel like a single family home there will thrive. It will have its problems. It will thrive. It will eventually become part of a great neighborhood and fantastic schools, and like everything will make it great. But a twin home would also thrive. I know that the neighbors would be neighbors. Like, it would work and it would be the buffer. So I'm just really torn between, is a twin home versus a single family home going to be the breaking point? I agree. I don't think it would be. Traffic wise, the answer here is getting traffic or parking enforcement down there, and
parking enforcement. Yeah,
people can't park there, and we're actually going to enforce that, and we're going to make it a safer place for kids. But that's a problem that exists with or without this development. So that's not a game changer for me. I kind of feel like it's just making it more profitable. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, with request, you can have an accessory dwelling unit here with a request, just like everybody else. As of last week, is that not correct? Am I not correct that the city council just approved that they can apply for one and this for an ADU?
Well, then the question is, would the community be opposed to a single family home with the ADU on that lot, right?
Yeah.
Because honestly, I actually think a twin home would be a better situation than an ADU
it
that
is
has
better.
a whole bunch of gray area.
That's what I think too.
So since they could apply with the new law that was just passed last week, I feel like a twin home is actually a better situation where it's set in stone what's going to be there. I feel like a single family home fits better with the neighborhood feel, but there's also twin homes adjacent to single family homes up on Slate Canyon Drive. So this use exists and it can work. I just don't know. The hinge point for me is really if the southeast area plan says we are not going to down zone single family lots, then that right there is my answer. I'm not opposed to the development, but that would make the zone change for me very hard to vote for.
Were you able to look into that, by the way? Into that
I
conflict?
tried to find it while I was sitting over there and I couldn't find it. I mean, it's somewhere, but I didn't know where I had it at my fingertips, so I couldn't see. I just was relying on Dustin's comments that he felt like it complied with the intent of both the future land use map and the southeast area plan.
I felt like his comments were in response to the general plan goals, because that's kind of how he did his analysis. And so I wonder if maybe he didn't take the southeast area plan into consideration when he.
I think what he was showing was the southeast area plan includes a future land use map that shows the property being low density.
More the map than the words.
Right.
Well, okay, I have the southeast area plan up. And I could go over the neighborhood plan goals for southeast neighborhood plan, if that would be helpful.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so this is page 2, southeast area plan, neighborhood plan goals. The goals and objectives for the southeast neighborhoods reflect the needs of the area and are based on a set of guiding values that were defined by city staff with the Southeast Neighborhoods Advisory Committee and considering other feedback provided by the neighborhood residents and other stakeholders. The subsequent pages will address the following goals by defining concepts, laying out specific objectives, and recommending courses of actions. Guiding values are as follows. Bullet point, establish character defining qualities that can be used to enhance the neighborhoods and protect existing qualities as a valuable asset to the neighborhoods. Next one, protect established single family residential neighborhoods and encourage well-kept neighborhoods while still providing housing opportunities for other demographics. Next one, identify a viable balance for retail and residential uses.
Will you read that last one before the balance one again?
Protect established single-family residential neighborhoods and encourage well-kept neighborhoods while still providing housing opportunities for other demographics. Identify a viable balance for retail and residential. Promote the development of high-quality businesses and housing. Establish methods to minimize traffic congestion and parking issues and improve safety on local streets. Enhance mobility and connectivity for all modes of travel within the neighborhoods. Improve effective enforcement of existing regulatory guidelines for the neighborhood, specifically occupancy restrictions in established neighborhoods. And the last bullet point, establish a clear vision for vacant land and redevelopment opportunities.
So in one of the emails we got, the language was in quotations. Can you find this in there? Consistent with the general plan policies to protect the single family character of established neighborhoods, no properties currently zoned as R1 are recommended for changes in this plan. Current zoning regulations should be strictly enforced in the R1 zones to encourage clean, well-kept communities and regulate over occupancy and parking issues facing the area.
I couldn't find that language when I Googled it, looked for it directly. Yeah, but someone has a hand. Maybe.
Is there a policy section that follows the goal section?
There is a policy.
Tell us a page number. Will you come to the pulpit? Tell us your name. Let's make this official and help us to find the words that you're referring to because we all remember hearing them as well.
I'm Kyle Stapley. I live directly east of the lot that we're talking about. This is in the section C, character and environment, number 3 under land use.
Can you give us a number like 14 point something or other?
There's not a point number. It's under the listing one family residential R1.
In the southeast area plan?
Yes. Might be in 02 is what it shows on mine.
I'm on that page, but which it's under section C character and
character
environment.
development. And then if you go down a little bit further, it goes to section 3. Oh, maybe it's in land use. Sorry. So under land use, section 3, under A housing, which lists all the different zoning in it. The first one is one family residential R1, and that's where that quote comes from.
Okay, section A, housing, one family residential R1, consistent with the general plan policies to protect single family character of the established neighborhoods. No properties currently zoned as R1 are recommended for changes in this plan. Additional areas of R1 development are recommended as shown on the future land use map. Just to clarify, the future land use plan I don't show that it recommends it as.
I show that
it
it's
shows
single
R1.
family, yeah.
It shows staying as R1. It does show the
LDR to the
Slate
left
Canyon apartments
as
as
LDR.
LDR. Additional areas of R1 development are recommended as shown on the future land use map, like I just mentioned, including the Old County Jail property. As such, the Slate Canyon area master plan is considered obsolete as it is replaced by this plan. Current zoning regulations should be strictly enforced in the R1 zones to encourage clean, well-kept communities and regulate over occupancy and parking issues facing the area.
Commissioners?
That's what I struggle with.
I know.
Yeah, that's,
Now, if I'm understanding area plans correctly, these are not set in stone laws. These are recommendations. And obviously, sometimes, like you were saying, we need to make exceptions because it's actually better in the long run. So the question is this better? Does this warrant one of those rare changes?
I think for me, like I recognize that language. It's plain. It recommends it remaining as R1. But it also competes against other policy objectives, such as
To use of vacant land and finding
use of
uses
vacant
that
land
will allow it
and-
to
and
develop.
clean, well-kept communities.
Right.
And when this lot has been vacant for 20 plus years, passing through 7 different owners,
And the fact that none of us really have a problem with twin home versus single family home densities. It's more the language and whether we're abiding by those policies. One thing
Yeah.
I was thinking as Mr. Gonzalez was reading this is that new development can improve safety, and some of the concerns of neighbors and things in the Southeast area plan that talk about safety could be addressed. If we have a driveway there, there will be no more curb parking there. If we have development there, then the street, and I believe the plan puts a sidewalk through and it deeds some of the land to Provo City for the street. And so the curve in the road will be slightly modified, and we could, as a condition of approval, we could say we would like a curb cut to go directly across the street and maybe some sort of mark. I don't know how that works legally with requiring a crosswalk or not, but something that improves the problem that exists by fixing up what's there. I really think a lot of the safety issue is because that's a vacant spot that nobody tends to. So those are some thoughts in regards to the objectives that were just read.
I'm wondering if there's a known pedestrian pattern. Is there anything the city can do?
It's a good conversation to have with Public Works.
To stripe that
or-
and signage it like for pedestrian crossing.
I know
like,
that
those are visual reminders to slow
they
down.
won't stripe roads as crosswalks unless I know there was one up on 1350 East to the north of this neighborhood that when they redid a road, they took it out. And I called about it to say, hey, we have a lot of kids who cross here. We need it to be striped. And they wouldn't do it because it didn't warrant it somehow. So I know there's certain requirements. You can't just say, I want to stripe here and they'll put it there, even if there's a lot of kids crossing.
Yeah, I think it's just good to bring it to the attention of Public Works that they may want to look at this area and see if there's an issue or if there's a way to mitigate a perceived safety issue. I will tell you, I did a lot of land planning work when we built the Daybreak project in South Jordan and worked with some internationally and world-renowned land planners. And the perception that a lot of cars on the road creates a problem because children can dart out from behind them or around or through them. and that's a hazard. I mean, there's some truth to that. On the other hand, the more cars that are on a road, inherently, the slower people drive on that road. And so you kind of have this issue. If you remove all the cars, that you can see kids so they don't dart out from behind cars, people inherently drive faster. So now the dangers increase. So, I mean, there's kind of a balance. The more cars that are parked there, generally speaking, people become more aware. Their speeds drop. They are paying more attention to the possibility that someone could dart out behind a car. And so some of the safety is actually improved a little bit when that occurs. But
I just asked Miss Kendall if she would build a single family home there, and she said yes. So
If the lot was affordable.
we were just trying to get a
Well,
feel for
that's the issue, right?
logistics.
That's the
I
problem.
wouldn't buy an $800,000 single family home now.
Well, and honestly,
if I'm being honest.
affordable housing is almost an oxymoron these days. So
All right, commissioners. Let's talk about the zone change first. How do you feel about the policies and goals that we just read and the options and the history, and what do you think is the best recommendation to forward to the city council? Or we could go backwards and say, is a twin home worth it? Would the twin home change your mind? Would, like if you have no intention of approving the twin home, then we obviously wouldn't recommend approval of the zone change unless we were really excited about it.
Good one. It's up to you.
It's not up to me. I'm one vote.
I don't know. I think there are competing policy objectives. Like there's policy objectives that favor an infill transition and cleaning up that lot that's been vacant, but there's policy objectives in maintaining it as a single family residential. So this is like a really this is going to be a close call, like either way, because there are competing interests and policy objectives that support both. They support both.
Yes, I mean, so again, I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other, but how I would think about it if I was in your seat, you're comparing the opportunity of a single family home being built versus a twin home, but you don't have a proposal for a single family home. You have a proposal for a vacant lot to stay a vacant lot indefinitely, right? Or you have a proposal for someone to rezone it, to potentially rezone it and build a twin family home. I mean, that's what you have before you. So it's not like you can say, I'm going to deny this and a single family home is going to be built. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but that's not what's before you. The proposal is for it to stay vacant the way it is, or for you to make a change and allow a twin home to be developed. That's what's before you.
If it's something we haven't already heard, come on up. I think you had 20 seconds left when you were done talking, so you've got 20 seconds.
Really quick. They bought the property knowing what it was zoned for. And I think that they go into it, and of course they want more money. You can get more money off a duplex than you can a single family home. And I'm pretty sure if they built a family home on it, it would sell.
Thank you. Look at me letting disorder in the room.
Actually, she's making an assumption that I bought it as a single family home lot. I did not. The person that we bought it from went here before you to try and get it zoned to be a twin home. The only reason why they said it got turned down was because they didn't have the frontage. So we went back and found like the suitor to the west that would give us the frontage, and we went forward with the assumption that we're going to be able to do that. And staff has said that they would recommend this the whole way. And as far as the neighborhood thing, I really think you got to start looking a little bit more at the code. And if we meet city code, rather than just the neighborhood, you're hearing comments from residential neighbors to the east, but I've also given you two valid people who are to the west who agree with what our zone change is and who agree with the twin home. So I don't feel like we're getting equal justice here. We're hearing 4 or 5 neighbors and one guy that's not even in the neighborhood. He's just in the south somewhere. See what I'm saying?
I think in the commission's defense, we're actually putting less clout on what we're hearing from the neighbors and more clout on our understanding of the intent of a general plan and of an area plan, and the desire to make judgments based on sound principles instead of emotion. So that's where we're
And
at.
that's what we're asked to do, right?
Yep. That's actually our job. We aren't elected. We are here to interpret ordinances, and that's where it gets tricky, because in these areas where, like Mr. Gonzalez was expressing, where policies and goals conflict with each other, then we have to make an interpretation of what the intent was and what we feel good about recommending. I'm still stuck with a patchwork zoning. One lot rezones, unless it matches what's next to it, I have a really, really hard time with it.
I guess like with the future land use map showing the Slate Canyon apartments being contemplated as LDR, like what's to prevent that that apartment area being LDR at this point? Because it should be, right? It's not really residential conservation.
I think the density matches
What would be a
LDR.
trigger point for it being zoned the way it's
Well,
supposed to?
I think the residential conservation zone kind of freezes it. So you can't change the density and make it any more intense than it is right now, right? So if those units eventually decayed, then you would look, and someone wanted to do something with it, you would look at the future land use map, which says it should be low density residential, right? And so you wouldn't be able to build something as dense as what's there. It doesn't necessarily imply that it has to be single family home. You could build twin homes as long as the lot sizes are big enough or whatever. But basically, the whole intent of the RC zone in that area and the future designation of LDR was that someone wouldn't come in and build some skyscraper high density residential project that would be out of character with the surrounding neighborhood. So does that answer your question?
Does the Slate Canyon Apartments current density match what an LDR designation would be? I think Mr. Gonzalez was saying.
No.
It's above it right now, right?
Of course. Yeah. And so that's why the future land use map is in the future. If someone's going to do something, the intent is that the density would drop, not go up.
My question though is everything around it is heavy commercial. So how does that align with putting this little knob of,
I'm sure that was a response to feedback from the neighborhood, like what
we want a grocery store?
Well, yeah, or that we don't want higher density. We want single family homes around us. I think that's kind of what that response was, right?
Okay, Ms. Kendall says we should just vote.
I second that.
Okay, give me a motion. We're going to start with item 1, the rezone.
I'll make a motion. I move item number 1, Stephen Sowby requests a zone map amendment from the R18 zone to the RC zone and the RC zone to the LDR zone in order to build a twin home located at 1220 East, 960 South, Provost South Neighborhood. I recommend approval of the requested rezone application to the municipal council with the following conditions: that parcel A and attachment 2 becomes part of a new lot through an approved subdivision plat.
Okay, we have a motion on the table for forwarding a positive recommendation to the city council for item number 1. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Whitlock. The motion was by Mr. Gonzalez. Any discussion on the motion? Or any clarification? Anything need to be added? Okay. Hearing none, we will vote. Once again, the motion is to forward a positive recommendation to the city council for the zone change as requested in item number 1. Mr. Whitlock.
Aye.
Ms. Kendall.
Nay.
I'm going to vote nay. Mr. Knutson.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Now what do we do?
It's a tie.
We've never had a tie vote
I
before.
vote. Wow, this is good. This is good.
We've actually never had a tie vote before. So if we don't have I would say, this is going to be my judgment call. If we don't have a majority vote, that the motion dies on the table and we need to discuss it some more or amend the motion.
A continuation then.
We understand why. We gotta understand why.
We
So
actually,
I think your options are, considering the fact that you didn't have a majority either way, the motion dies. I think that's a fair representation. So at this point, your option is you can discuss it some more and someone can change their vote, or you can continue it because you want more information and it could be discussed at the next planning commission.
Just hope we have 7 next time. So we
well,
can't
no,
get-
the problem is this. If we continue it, what information would we be asking for? I
No,
feel
I'm
like
not-
we-
I'm not telling you you should. I'm
I'm
just
now saying this is a
options.
discussion item. If that's an option, what information do you feel like would help you to be persuaded in a vote one way or the other? What are we missing that we need to hear?
I mean, the way I would think about it, and maybe this is an inappropriate use of continue, is just that you would hope that you would get 7 so you can't get a gridlock again, because I don't think it's fair to let his motion die. He didn't lose it. So it's weird to let it die to me. So I think it's out of fairness for the process. It feels like a continuation is appropriate. I don't know what's required. If it dies, he has to resubmit.
No, I don't think he has to resubmit. It just didn't pass.
Just
So
didn't pass.
we
Oh.
have to keep going till we come up with what to do next.
Yeah, I think you either need to discuss it until you can vote so that a motion passes, some motion, whether that's to forward a positive recommendation or a negative recommendation, one or the other. You have to do one or the other because your obligation is to send it to the city council one way or the other. So you need to be able to do that tonight unless you've decided that you need more information and you want to continue it so you can do that appropriately in your next planning commission meeting.
So if I'm understanding correctly, this would be further discussion now that we have a dead motion. I feel like the reason we're split here is because we're really having a hard time determining goals and policies and intents of the general plan and area plan. I don't think that any of us, I would actually think that most of us don't have a problem with the twin home. I think it's more of a, what does this represent? And is this good planning in the sense of changing zoning and going contrary to some other policies that we wouldn't be met by the vote? So I think for those who voted for and against, that we have the same concerns.
That was my primary consideration, yes, too. Even though I voted yes, but yes, I think it's a very valid concern.
So what changes that? What information or process or discussion, aside from Mr. Whitlock's suggestion of having 7 people here who have different opinions, but what would change that for any of us? What do we need to discuss? What do we need to work through to decide whether this meets the intent of the area plan, the general plan, the future land use map, and the neighborhood's needs? And remember that the neighborhood isn't just people who don't want the development, but people who do want the development. Like, we're looking at both sides of that. Wow.
I'm wondering-
To me, I mean, if I can add a comment, there seems to be 2 opposing issues that are causing you guys to maybe disagree with each other. One is the Southeast Area Plan's suggestion that undeveloped lots stay single-family homes, correct?
No,
Yeah,
it says things currently zoned as RC1 status.
Yeah, it's
Right,
not undeveloped.
right.
It's
It's not
the
undeveloped.
zoning
Right.
change.
So then you have a competing goal or objective of that plan that vacant lots should be developed, right?
And I would add the other general goal of the entire area plan, which is to create diverse housing.
Yeah. So I think those are the 2 issues you have to resolve. And I think I would encourage you to think if I'm going to favor keeping the zoning consistent with what it is does that somehow trump the other goals to develop vacant lots or the other items that Mr. Whitlock mentioned? And if they don't, then I think I would ask you, what are you withholding the rezone opportunity for? To what benefit? I mean, why have you determined that goal is more important than another? And I'm not saying that one is more important than the other, but I think you have to answer that question for yourselves.
One thing is that I feel like some of those other goals cannot be met by single family or a twin home. And so the safety can improve either way. So the safety goal for me and the vacant lot, to me, both get taken care of whether we approve the zone change or not. So it really only comes down to, are we okay with, what was that last one that I just forgot about? That was a competing interest to the not changing single family. Diverse housing versus not changing the zoning. Like it limits really the conflicts. I feel like the other conflicts are ameliorated either way.
Yeah,
Developing the lot takes care of some of those goals. Ms. Kendall?
So you can help me by, one of the things that lingers with me is if you do this, then you're setting a precedent also for other margins of neighborhoods where there might be an undeveloped parcel because it's on the margin of the neighborhood. So how can you help me with that? Because if we're willing to go against it here, what it says in the neighborhood plan, then why wouldn't we do that?
I don't
in
think
other
I don't think
places?
you're setting any precedent. You're not making a decision that requires you to make the same decision going forward now and forever. Does that make sense? I mean, I think every situation you're going to look at differently. You're going to look at that specific neighborhood. You're going to look at the specific issues that are relevant to that zone change or whatever at that time. I mean, I get concerned sometimes when we think about, well, if we do this now, we're going to have to do that in all the future opportunities going forward. That's not the case. You're going to look at every single one of them individually.
Sure, but the arguments will be the same.
Pardon me?
The arguments will be the same.
They might not be.
from
They might be
developers, though.
completely different.
Well, they could be the same, but
They could be.
It'll be different because it's a different environment, a different setting, a different.
Cost of living could be different. Cost of
Um,
housing could
but
be
it-
For
different.
me, like I don't have, I don't know. I tend to look at each project case by case.
You should.
And
I think you should.
I don't see it as establishing precedent. There is no precedent in.
I would.
There's
Yeah, I
no
wouldn't want you.
precedent anymore. Like
yeah.
even in the Supreme Court rulings.
I wouldn't want
But
you to feel like you're
there's no
hamstringed.
precedent here. Like things are denied or approved on a case by case basis
Yeah,
regularly.
yeah, but I understand what Melissa's saying, or Commissioner Kendall, that you're basically saying that if we do it here, then the same rationale could be applied again and again, and there's less overall respect for the area plan's stated goals. I understand that.
And we've had a lot of noise about area plans and respecting area plans. And that's why I'm very, very cautious in doing anything that goes contrary to those blessed documents.
Could we consider the continuation?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, unless anyone's readily going to change their mind, does anyone?
It might not change the outcome
Well,
also, but
it's true, but if we
I mean,
get
what-
a non-even number, then we would get a decision one way or another.
do we normally have, I mean, we'd normally have 7, but don't we sometimes have 8 or 9 commissioners?
We could.
We only have 8 right now.
8
I don't think
who
it's
are
physically
absent
possible.
right now.
How many do we have, Rachel? Do you know? 7.
Oh, 7.
So if everybody shows up,
Rolene's
we'll
the
have
only one
7.
missing. That's not fair to her.
We're so
Don't
sorry.
tell
We,
her.
we called her out on the record.
I really don't have a problem with this twin home. I really only have a problem with honoring the policies and goals.
I agree with that.
So is that the further discussion we need?
We could pass the twin home, right? Or they're not, is one dependent after the other?
Yeah, we could approve it. But
And
it doesn't go into effect unless
I know it
item
doesn't
1
do
is
anything
approved
beyond
by the
just
city council.
not having to come back to this, maybe, I don't know. Discussing.
I feel like the twin home or the single family home would improve the safety issues we've discussed, would get rid of neighborhood blight, would infill in a lovely way. I really only have a problem with this on a loyalty to good planning guidelines. So close to voting yes.
But extending the low density residential zone. So I'm looking at the area plan right here. And in 2015, they showed the future zone, and then they show the future zone is low density residential right there at that same area.
But it doesn't include the corner property.
does not
It
include
only
the corner-
includes the current
Right.
apartments. It shows it as single family, both in map form and verbally. And that's where to me, that's the crux of what we do is interpret these plans, and it seems very clear.
I guess my question is what was the thought process in trying to make that jog right there? And I mean, and we can't think back to 2015, but I guess my point also is that it's not patchwork zoning if we are making it consistent with the neighboring zone, right? So I don't see that as I appreciate your concern about patchwork zoning. I have very similar feelings, but I don't think that this falls into the same realm as we're just
Right.
picking a random
You're right,
vacant lot
because it
in the middle of
isn't
this.
RC, it's LDR. What about the frontage issue though? Because to me, it fronts onto the same street as, like adjacent to the single family neighborhood. I know there's also apartments that front onto that street further to the west, but does that give a visual, this is our neighborhood? Twin homes really aren't that different from single family homes. They blend in many ways without people noticing. And honestly, as we said, a single family home is better than an ADU, or a twin home is better than an ADU in my mind.
Well, and we're also getting that transition element. We have something that looks similar, it's acting similar, but it's also acting different. Like I said at the outset, if there's an infill situation that fits, this is a pretty good fit. So.
Are there any other properties that are on the margin of the neighborhood that are undeveloped? This is the only one.
For Cinnamon Ridge,
Yes.
for the Cinnamon Ridge development, no.
No, there's not.
Well,
There's a few
sure not.
agricultural properties that are on the eastern fringes of this area, of the Cinnamon Ridge area, but they're agricultural, so that doesn't apply with single family. I think Mr. South has convinced me with his map interpretive dance. Do we want to entertain a motion of continuation, recommend approval, recommend denial?
wait, just to clarify, are you saying Mr. South, Commissioner South persuaded you to change your vote?
Possibly. I'm not at liberty to say that till we actually vote.
Would we move for a revote then?
Can we do that? Okay. Do we have a motion to revote and a second on the motion to revote? Let's do that to make it official.
I move that we vote again on the original motion.
Okay, which was to recommend forward a positive recommendation to the city council for item number 1, rezoning request with the conditions listed in the staff report for the parcel A in attachment 2 to become part of a new lot through an approved subdivision plat. That was Mr. South with the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Whitlock seconded the motion. All right, we're voting on the same motion as stated earlier with more discussion in the middle. Mr. Whitlock,
Yay.
Miss Kendall,
Okay.
what was that? That was nay.
Sorry, I'll say aye.
I'm going to vote in favor. Yay.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we now have a 4-2 vote. In favor of forwarding a positive recommendation to the municipal council for item number 1. And I know that the city council watches these, but I would really love for them to have the concerns that were discussed heavily be
No, we will. Yeah, we'll make
Passed
sure
on.
that we reiterate the conversations that we had tonight and why.
our
Yeah.
main concern with this not being 100% approval was that consistency with those plans
Sure.
and those goals.
Nope, I think that's fair.
Okay. All right. That's a great idea. Will you pass that along to Mr. Pepperoni, that we would love to talk about how to weigh these
Yeah.
competing policy objectives
Absolutely.
and goals in the
Yeah.
future?
Yeah, it'd
That's
be a
good.
good training opportunity.
That's great. Great idea.
All right, item number 2. Do we need to discuss this or have we beat this dog? Oh, that was probably very inhumane of me. Have we beat this
The
as much as
sand.
possible?
Beat the sand.
Okay, item number 2, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the requested concept plan application, the proposed, that Stephen Sowby requests approval of a concept plan for a new twin home in a proposed LDR low density residential zone located at 1220 East, 960 South.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Whitlock is going to second the motion. Any discussion on the motion? I would actually like to clarify something on this. We talked about how the concerns of the neighborhood would be addressed with development, whether it was single family or twin home, that the crossing area and the traffic and the road being curved and all of those things would be taken care of with development. How does that look from here on out? If this is approved, does it come back to anyone to make sure those things are met? Do we put conditions on it to say, address this?
Well, the concept plan for that piece of property can only include what he has authority to do within his property boundary, right? So you can't put a condition, for example, that as part of the development of this project and the construction of the twin homes, he has to put a crosswalk across Provo City Street, right? I mean, you couldn't do that. So,
But we can require Public Works to
evaluate the
this
safety.
concern that maybe
Sure.
wasn't evaluated in their initial
Sure.
review of the project.
Right. I think you can say that one of the things you want to have answers to are the concerns about traffic and childhood safety in that neighborhood and how this piece of property might impact that or participate in the added safety of that area or something like that.
Is that something you guys would like to include as a,
But understand, I mean, your answer to that, when Public Works will look at that and say, well, yeah, based on the traffic count and based on what's going on, here are the things that we see going on that road.
I'm more thinking
you
like,
could
if
ask-
there's really a problem, if there's really a high volume of pedestrian traffic, I don't need a traffic count. We already know
Right.
there is. I would just like to make sure the design of the project and the way it lines up with the trail system and the road network, that it would be smartly done so that there isn't an increased problem. And if anything, it's better than it is
Okay, so
already.
I'm just trying to think through this, right? So let's say that we're not talking about a twin home, we're talking about a single family home. The driveway is only going to go in one place. The driveway is not going to go in that much different.
But he has
place
to put
for
in curb
for
and
a twin
gutter
home.
and improve the sidewalk. So I'm saying in those improvements that are made as part of a regular
Right.
project, that that would be taken into account to improve the safety of the neighborhood so the neighbors' concerns are met. You're understanding what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I think what you're saying.
I'm not saying more expense.
It's gonna be look just like a neighborhood. Whatever the road configuration is, whatever the sidewalk along that road, whatever distance from the sidewalk to that side, the actual road, all that's given to us. That's told to us what we're supposed to do.
Right. And I know, and some of that is just automatically checked
Right.
off by the
Right.
code requirements. But what I'm saying is I would like to make sure there's an assurance in this project being approved that says, we're going to look at that trail on the north side and make sure that the curb cuts for the sidewalk on the other side match up. And that if there needs to be a no parking area against the curb, that is also taken into account. And those are things that Public Works does, but they don't do it as a normal project plan review. So I just want to make sure those things are addressed since we know they're problems.
I think they actually do it as a normal project plan approval.
Anyway, I would just like to note that those are concerns we would for sure like to have Public Works review, and then we will trust them to do their job
Sure.
because they're the
I think
professionals to
that's
do
fine.
that.
Yeah.
Is that something that needs to be stated as a condition or of approval? I know we don't want to put conditions on things that we really can't condition. So I want
Yeah,
to.
that's why I'm hesitating because it's not that I don't understand what you're saying. My hesitancy is the things that you're requesting are things that we would normally do during our normal review of the site plan for this project anyway. I don't think it's going to be different because it's a twin home versus what we would do for a single family home. Those are the types of issues that we would address or respond to anyway, regardless. So I think expressing that you've heard the residents and that you want our review to make sure that we're considering that like we normally would is just a fair reminder that it's important to you and you want us to do our jobs. Does that make sense? But it's not an extra requirement that we wouldn't do anyway, if that makes sense.
So just an emphasis
But
on
and that's
those
fine.
public
And
works issues.
I respect that and appreciate the reminder. I think it's healthy.
Okay.
So by virtue of hearing the residents and discussing it here and communicating that to you, Keith, then we can leave it at that and have confidence that development services goes through that with their normal process.
Because what we're basically saying is do it right the first time.
Exactly.
You know,
I
it
understand.
would be nice maybe if somebody contacts neighborhood. I think this is actually on you. I know that zoning enforcement has been doing a whole lot lately that they haven't done before because they haven't had the manpower. And we've received a lot of training about what they've been doing and a lot of information. And so I would implore you as neighbors to contact the zoning enforcement office every time there's a vehicle parked for more than 72 hours.
Yeah, I mean, if for example,
Report them, they will ticket them.
That's right.
They have a great process. They've been telling us how their follow-up is, and it's working way better than it has before. But it still unfortunately is complaint-based because there's just not enough manpower to drive the streets and notice things. So having seen it work so much better in other areas of the city, I would say let's take care of those problems, and then they're not problems with new development coming in.
And additionally, I'm not, in addition to the neighborhood people who are here, but also the neighborhood chair who's not here. It's unfortunate that they weren't to a community, a neighborhood meeting wasn't held. I'm sure there would have been more response, specifically in addressing that trail issue. As in my mind,
But if there's not supposed to be parking in front of a fire hydrant. There's not supposed to be other things. So I'm just going to stop discussing that because that's not about the project. That's something that we actually know how to fix. And so I would just recommend that process to you. Okay. So we've discussed, there's nothing we need to amend the motion with. So back to the motion on the table, which is approving item number 2, the request for a concept plan approval. It has been moved and seconded, and we will start with Mr. Whitlock on the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you all for coming. I know that was more grueling than we hoped it would be, but that's what we're here for.
Have a really good discussion.
Do we have, I guess to make it official, do we have a motion to adjourn? Or does you guys want, Mr. Knutson, do you want to stay here all night?
No, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay. Do we have a second by Mr. Gonzalez?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I never let you come back up again. I'm sorry, I got distracted.